So what I wanted to talk about today was the paradigm that for me is about how do we make the impossible inevitable. That's what I'm going to talk about. And one of the TED guides on the speaker notes that we get is not to use any big words, which isn't a problem for me because I really don't know any. So you won't need to worry about that. In fact, I'll tell you how small my vocabulary is. When it actually came along that we had to watch the language, I had to actually go and look at what a paradigm actually was. So I had to do some research, and I'm going to show you what I found out when we get that speech up in a second. So my topic then about making the impossible inevitable is something that I'm absolutely passionate about, and of all the paradigms I could have talked about, I actually can't really think of a better one, in fairness. So how do we take something that in our minds right now appears to be impossible, and how do we actually work on that to make it inevitably just happen? That's what I'm going to be talking around. Are we okay to go? Few more seconds, good. Phil. Okay, I've come a really long way to speak today. Not as far as some people, but quite a long way. I've come over 200 miles. And in a moment, you're going to see why that is. I live at home with 4 daughters and a wife. I'm not being unkind, if anyone knows what that's like. You can't get a word in at home. Nobody listens to me. So when Hilly said to me, please would you like to come and spend 200 miles travelling to talk for 18 minutes uninterrupted, I would travel a lot further than that for the privilege, you know? 200 miles was nothing, trust me. I would go there, and I'll show you why in a second, you'll see the pictures. So, okay, there you go, there she is. That's my wife Cheryl and my 4 daughters. And when I say they talk a lot, this one here, this lady with a white kind of cardigan on, she talks in her sleep. So, you know, you can't get a word in when she's around. But that's fine, we're going to talk about the paradigm. Now, when I was doing my research, and I seriously did have to do the research into this, exactly what we said before, it's a shift in a change of information, isn't it? So it's a model or a pattern that we look at differently. That's all I understood it as. Came into the Greek language many, many years ago, came into the English language in about the 15th century. But it wasn't until this man Thomas Kuhn, I think in 1962, gave it its contemporary meaning that people really in England started using that phrase at all. So how do we look at old information in a new way? And what he did was he actually gave us a picture of a duck rabbit. So you either see that as one thing, a duck, or as another thing as the rabbit. And what he was saying was that's how we need to sometimes shift our paradigms to look at old information in a new way. Now, in terms of making the impossible inevitable, what I'm going to do is call upon 3 figures from history to give us a clue as to how we do it. Are you okay with this? So have a look at this. 3 famous quotations. Here's the first one. If you don't mind, I'll read it just quickly. T.E. Lawrence, all men set goals, but not equally. Those who set goals by night in the dusty recesses of their minds wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But those who set their goals by day are dangerous men, capital M, by the way, for men and women, for they may act on their goals with open eyes to make them possible. That's one clue as to how we shift our little paradigm of making the impossible inevitable. Let's look at this lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady, President Theodore Roosevelt's wife. The future belongs to those who believe in their smart goals. Your faces are looking a little puzzled. Do you know these quotations? I'm guessing that some of you maybe do. But the most famous one of all, I've saved until last here. Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, I think this was an early draft as what was eventually to become a very famous speech. So here was his quotation. Do you remember this? I have a goal. Can you imagine him walking into his advisors and speechwriters and saying, I've got a great line for a speech. I have a goal. They're going, Dr. King, can you just stand there and look good, leave the thinking to us? We'll write the speeches, okay? I'm not quite sure it would have caught on 50 years later if he'd have said, I have a goal. Of course, that wasn't what was said by these people at all. And this is at the very heart of shifting our paradigm of making the impossible inevitable. This is the key for me. I was 32 years old, by the way, when I found this out. I'd spent 14 years in corporate life, in banking, around Europe, being told to chase my goals, to hit more revenues, to save more money, to make more profits. No wonder those guys ended up in such a huge mess in 2008, because they were giving us some dodgy information to work on. Look what T. Lawrence really said. He doesn't even mention the word goal. Life is not about goals. Look at the beauty of this language. All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night in the dusty recesses of their minds wake in the day to find that it was vanity, but the dreamers of the day are dangerous men. For they may act their dream with open eyes to make it possible. Hang on a second, this isn't about goals at all. This is about dreams. Eleanor Roosevelt didn't say smart goals. Look at the rhythm and the beauty of her language. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. I didn't know this when I was a young man trying to make my way in corporate life. And of course, Dr. King didn't say I have a goal. You should have seen your faces when I put that up, I have a goal, by the way. It was a picture for me. That was worth the journey on its own. I can promise you that. He actually said, I have a dream, didn't he? So what's the difference then between the goal and the dream? There's a huge difference. You see, what happens in our lives is that the goal is the thing we have to do, but the dream is the thing that gives it power. As children, we all knew this intuitively, instinctively. We knew that life was about dreams. My mother learned very early on in life how to motivate me. She learned that if I wanted an ice cream after dinner, she could get me to get the ice cream by eating my vegetables. Did anyone in the audience never eat their vegetables? Was I the only one who wouldn't eat the veg? Mum made me eat my vegetables, that was her goal. And how did she do that? She got me to picture the dream of the ice cream. And she learned, there was an interesting story about how she learned this. She was talking to my next door neighbour, Mrs. Catterall. And I would never eat my vegetables at home. Mrs. Catterall told her that I always ate them when I was at her house. Now that was because I wanted to impress Mrs. Catterall's daughter. We were 6 years old at the time. She was worth impressing, right? And my mother went, why do you not eat your vegetables here? Are Mrs. Catterall's vegetables better than mine? No, but the daughter isn't here to impress, so I don't need to eat the vegetables. My mother started to use this back on me, I have to tell you. Because then when I was at home, and I wouldn't maybe do my homework, she'd say, Mrs. Catterall's daughter will be impressed with boys who do their homework. She learned very quickly, my mother. She used it back on me. But then I learned quickly too. You know, when she asked me to pass my exams when I was 11 years old, I said, well, I'll do it, but I want a new bicycle. The goal of the exams became the dream of the bicycle for me. I was a quick learner too. And that's how we motivate ourselves to achieve things, to distract our minds from the pain and the sacrifice and the effort and the resilience that's involved in doing the things we have to do to get the things we want to have. And when that penny drops in our minds, we release power into our systems which enable us to achieve great things. It leaves us a little, I think, as we go into adulthood, if we're not careful, to nourish it. And one of the examples of that comes from a friend of mine. This friend of mine wanted to lose weight. And she was never able to lose the weight until she met the man. Not the man of her goals, by the way, but the man of her what? Dreams. She met the man of her dreams. He asked her to marry him. 2 years later, she stepped down that aisle to the marriage ceremony wearing a dress 2 sizes smaller than we were talking about earlier. Why? Because she was motivated by a dream, by what she wanted, not by what she had to do. She wasn't thinking about the diet anymore. And what I learned is this works for all systems in life. It works for if you want to get an MBA, if you want a new job, if you want to write a business plan, if you want to lose weight, if you want to stop smoking, whatever you can do, shift the paradigm from the goal, from the pain of what you have to do, and to the dream of what you want to have as a result of the actions that you're about to undertake. That's the power of this paradigm. The goal becomes the dream. Now, the best example I ever saw of this comes from this lady, Pauline Wood. And when we were, a few years ago, maybe 1993, Pauline was in a tough situation. She had a ruptured disc in her spine. She had a divorce to go through. And the settlement for the divorce was probably going to cost her, she felt, both the business that she was running and the marriage, and the home that she had, that she lived in. Now, one of my mentors, Art Neiman, said to me, listen, if you see a person exhibiting stress in their behavioural, psychological profile of their behaviour, they might be going through one of those 3 things. Either a health issue, a financial issue, or a relationship issue. Pauline Wood was going through all 3 things at the same time. And it was weighing her down. It was an issue for her in her life. So we had a little chat. And I said, Pauline, you've got some amazing obstacles in front of you here, but what you have to do is set some goals. We have to help you set a goal to sort your back out. We have to set a goal to sort your relationship out and find a man you can share the rest of your life with. And we have to set a goal for you to resolve those financial issues. 3 things all at the same time. We need a focal point for this. We need to turn the goal into a dream. Something that will make it all worthwhile. That will give you a reason to achieve it. You know, people don't say, I need to find the house of my goals, do they? Or I met the man of my goals. You think, you need to lie down, right? I've just bought the car of my goals. No, Pauline needed to meet the man of her dreams. She needed some dreams in her life. Her mind went back to when she was a little girl in 1948, at the age of 8 years old, when one day she heard a noise outside and ran to find out what it was. When she got out there, she found it was this thing in the sky, and her father was in the garden. She said, Dad, what's this? And he said, oh, it's a helicopter. It was 1948, Northwest England. She said, it's a helicopter. He said, come inside, I have one in a book. He took her inside into an encyclopedia. He showed her an encyclopedia. You remember those? You never heard of those, right? You're too young, right? There used to be these things called encyclopedias. They were big books with stuff in. And he opened the book, and there was this 3D image of this helicopter, a cardboard image of it. She said, I looked at it 3 or 4 times a week. And I said, Dad, will I ever fly one of these? He said, Pauline, everyone will fly one of these. You definitely fly one of these. Now, fast forward to 1993 to our discussions. She said, Michael, I've got the thing I need to focus on. The dream's in my mind. I said, what is it, Pauline? She said, I'm going to become a helicopter pilot. Did you see that one coming? I never saw it coming, right? She was 53 years old. She is a diminutive, she's tiny, okay? However tall she is, it starts with 4. She's not 5 feet, so it's 4 feet something. She's a tiny little diminutive, dainty, beautiful lady. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, she's going to be a helicopter pilot. She said, well, I'll have to sort out all these things. I'll have to sort out the spine. I'll have to find a man to share my life with. And I'll have to sort out the business and the home in order to make this happen. This will focus my mind on the end game, on the dream, and make all the efforts seem worthwhile. Wow, what a great idea. I said, well, you get on with it, Pauline, because you'll be the best student I've ever had if you can pull that one off. 5 years later, she sent me a photograph. It was taken off the northwest coast of England in a town called Blackpool. They have a commercial airport there, quite a big airport now, actually. And it was of her making her first solo flight as a 58-year-old woman out of Blackpool Airport. I was absolutely astounded. I phoned her. She said, yeah, me and my new husband are learning to fly together. I said, Pauline, this is astounding. You are incredible. She said, oh, wait, she said, 14th of August, 1999, I've booked the date for my private helicopter pilot's exam. I said, wow, you better call me and let me know how you get on. Now, when you do this exam, you have to, you book the day, but you don't get a time slot. So she was there at 10:30. 12 o'clock came, no phone call from Pauline. 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock. She didn't actually take the exam until 5:30. You fly the examiner around for an hour, and he lets you know whether you've passed or not. The phone rang around 6:30 that night. I knew it was going to be her. She said, hi, Michael, it's Pauline. I said, hi, Pauline. Do you have some good news for me? She said, you're talking to a newly qualified private helicopter pilot. It was the eve of her 59th birthday. She says, no one here in this airport can remember any woman ever doing this as old as me. I could be, she's very modest, I could be the oldest woman in the world ever to do this. I lived the dream. I'm living the dream, she said. I shifted the paradigm. She didn't say that. That's what she'd done here. She didn't know. I didn't know what a paradigm was back then. But she shifted one nonetheless. She turned the goals into dreams. She made the have-tos into want-tos. You take your mind off what you have to do and the sacrifice of that and put it onto why you're doing it, to give yourself a reason to make the change you need to make. Now, I don't know if you've ever been scared, but at the end of this phone call, I got really scared. She said, are you coming to fly with me? Now, you know when your head's saying no and then there's a voice that sounds like yours saying yes? You think, whose is that voice? And it's yours? I ended up saying yes, I'd come and fly. Wow, with this tiny little lady. She took me out from Blackpool Airport. We flew out over the ocean. And we have a headset on. She said, Michael, we were in a Robinson R-22 helicopter. She was now almost 60. I ran for a long time. I couldn't hide, but I ran for a long time. It took her a long time to get me in the helicopter. But she got me in the end. She said, Michael, this was my dream. And I said, yes, Pauline, I know it was your dream, to be a helicopter pilot. She said, no, not to be a helicopter pilot. To fly you in my helicopter was my dream. I said, Pauline, you're kidding me. She said, no, through all those dark days when I was having all those problems with the bank and everything else, and all the problems with the divorce and all the problems with my health, I thought of flying you in a helicopter. That was the thought that kept me going. This was Pauline as a young mum. Guess who the kid sat next to her is? It's me. Pauline's my mother. Yeah, you're scared now, aren't you? Now you're really scared. Yeah, I thought I'd just lull you into that one. The story gets, not clap yet, I'm running out of time. The story gets worse. It gets worse. She was saying, where would you like to go? I was kind of thinking, just down safely, anywhere will do really. I didn't know. And we flew out over the ocean. She told me it was her dream to fly me. How awesome is that? And then she said, we landed. She said, I'm ready for retiring now. I'm almost 60. I said, yes, Mum. She said, she had a ladies' clothes shop. She owned the property. She was going to continue to rent that out. But she was having a closing down sale. And she raised £125,000 from selling the stock. I said, Mum, that's fabulous. You and David can, save that as a nest egg for the future. She said, oh, we've spent it. So what do you mean you've spent it? She said, this helicopter you're in at the moment, we've just bought it. They bought the helicopter. She said, that was the dream, Michael, to fly you as a fully qualified private helicopter pilot in my own helicopter. That was the dream. That's probably the best example I've ever seen of making the impossible inevitable. She changed her mind about the way she looked at things. She took it off all the problems and onto all the beauty of making the dream real. And what she did, we can all do. I don't care what your challenge is in life, what your opportunity is, what paradigm you'd like to shift. You can apply the rule of changing a goal into a dream, of putting your mind onto why you committed and why it will be worth it, and you can make it happen. I think it's Goethe who says, whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. I've never seen anything that can withstand the power of you when you're focused on a dream. It took me so many years to learn that. 14 years in corporate banking had me chasing goals. Life was never about goals. If you ask a training manager to send you on a course about goal setting, they'll send you. But ask them to send you on a course about dream building. They'll look at you as if you've gone crazy, and yet that is the paradigm. Because that is the way to have the things in our lives that we need and want and deserve. Now, unwittingly, you have been part of my dream today. You didn't know that, did you? But you've made one of my dreams come true. Thank you so much for doing that. I'll finish and say goodbye now, but my final message is this. Listen, follow your dream, okay? Will you promise me you'll do that? Don't live a life of goal setting. Live a life of dream building. And then go out there and make it happen. Thank you for listening to me today. Thanks a lot.